Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Football Baron podcast. Tottenham and Chelsea disappoint their fans in poor performances from both teams against smaller clubs that they should have won against, as well as Liverpool failing to get a win and three crucial points in a record-breaking run against Nick Pope, who's shined on behalf of Burnley, putting in a stellar performance, saving so many shots. As well as later on in the show, we'll be talking about our Dutch Wonderkid to watch in the Bundesliga. Starting off with the Everton versus Southampton game. Now, Everton slowly have stalled out, I think. I think that Everton were looking very strong under Ancelotti, and I think that they were looking quite they were looking like they were going in a positive direction. But now that they're drawing and not really getting those wins as often as they did under Carlo Ancelotti, I think you're seeing that stall in growth, and I think hopefully he can rejuvenate that in the next season or potentially do a strong finish to the season with only a couple games left. But Southampton, strong performance. I think they have had a fairly good season. And I think that a key player from Southampton is, of course, Danny Ings. And now Danny Ings, I think Danny Ings can be the Jamie Vardy for Southampton. Just the way they use and rely on Danny Ings is quite incredible in how he delivers quite consistently. Looking at his stats, 22 goals and 3 assists in 38 overall appearances. 19 of those are in the Premier League. 19 goals in the Premier League. Now, looking at these stats, some of you or some people might say that, oh, that's not as major or that's not that impressive. I mean, he's in the race for winning the Golden Boot. I don't think he'll win it, sadly. I love him to win it, but I think that just looking at the team that he's playing in, Southampton, not the strongest team in the Premier League, not one of the more stronger teams where the forwards get much more service. Of course, Danny Ings is the focal point, but in a team like Southampton, it's quite impressive what he's doing. 19 goals in the Premier League. Now, he came from Liverpool. I don't think he was given... he just wasn't given that full chance, I guess, at Liverpool under Jurgen Klopp. He was given some chances, but I don't think it was a working relationship for both Liverpool and Danny Ings. But now that he's here in Southampton, I do think that if he's looking to stay here at that club, I think that what Jamie Vardy has replicated at Leicester, I think he can achieve at full to some degree. Now, I'm not saying that he's gonna help Southampton win a title, which I don't think is very likely. But I think that the role he plays in contributing to Southampton's success in the Premier League will be Danny Ings, is how Jamie Vardy contributes to Leicester doing well. Just scoring a lot of goals and being on a hot streak that really pushes his team to wins and points and up the Premier League table, and just really helping his team get the max performance they can. He scored a goal in this game, just great player, and I think that he's starting to be truly unlocked. And I think he can be a good alternative for strikers in the Premier League for the English national team. I think that Tammy Abraham has really slowed down, and I think that Danny Ings could be a very useful striker to call in for in the English national team. And I think that Gareth Southgate should definitely take a look at him. Tottenham and Chelsea failed to impress. I think just the way they played was very poor, both of those teams. Tottenham, you see it more consistently. Chelsea is quite inconsistent in their performances. You see them just hot and on fire one game, and then you just see them slumping and just doing quite awful the next. Tottenham, I just think that the Tottenham's front three is not really doesn't have that spark anymore as they did. And I think it needs to be revived, that spark. Tottenham in a 0-0 scoreline against Bournemouth. Chelsea getting dominated by Sheffield United in a 3-0 win. Now, Sheffield just really, the way they were able to get those goals, it was too easy, I think. That Chelsea just looks very open in their defensive performance. I think that Frank Lampard was talking about the mentality, and you can see that. Their mentality is very on and off. You see them do amazingly in one game and dominate a team, and then like in certain times they just drop off and don't have that exact same mentality that really pushes them across the border into a strong result. Now, I think that Chelsea will definitely have some work to do during this off season with new signings coming in, such as Timo Werner and Hakim Ziyech, and potentially Kai Havertz. I think that if those signings are going to be implemented, hopefully they bring a new mentality that isn't plaguing Chelsea right now. That's just really holding them back in terms of, I think, winning a title next season, which I think they very well could do if they get the right players, which they so far are from the looks of it. And I think that it can look very strong for those teams. And Tottenham is in the same boat, but they don't have the same transfer budget. And I think that Jose Mourinho will have a big tough time. And it's been pretty clear sight to see that Tottenham aren't looking in the best shape either. But Chelsea, they're still in a strong position in the top four. They can hold it and get that Champions League football, but they do need to fix that mentality problem that Frank Lampard was talking about. Norwich City in a shocking, just overall disappointing result. And I think that some of the interviews from the players after the game, I think it was sincere, and I think it's kind of understandable the way they're in the situation that they're in. And unfortunately, they lost in a 4-0 scoreline for them and just got absolutely hammered by the Hammers. And I think that West Ham will benefit, and it looks like West Ham are going to stay in the league, and Watford are going to stay in the league, but Norwich are officially relegated from the Premier League and will be in the Championship next season. Now, I think that Norwich City, the way they play, the way they deal business-wise, is they don't like spending too much money, and they sell some of their best players. And I can see certain players leaving, such as Todd Cantwell and Max Aarons, who Max Aarons is looking like a young prodigy. He's only 20 years old. Todd Cantwell is also pretty young, 22, was 21 earlier in the season, and he put in some stellar performances. I think that Todd Cantwell could potentially be a most likely transfer to another bigger club that's already in the Premier League. And I think that Norwich would be more than willing to, because they always like to sell their players and get the money from these players when giving in transfers. And I think that we could really see those two players moving on, and I think Norwich will profit from that, get the money that they did from the Premier League, and then move into the Championship and look to try to get back in there. And I don't think they'll be spending a huge load of money to get back in the Premier League, most likely. And but I do see them in the future coming back in the Premier League. I think they've been promoted and relegated five times, I believe. I think it's the most in the history. I was looking at a report, and I think that Norwich fans will be sad, but I think they can be positive for the future, because I think some of the funds that they could potentially receive from players such as Todd Cantwell and Max Aarons potentially leaving is considerable, and a good future potentially for Norwich, and hopefully for Norwich fans, they can come back even stronger. Liverpool versus Burnley was an interesting game in terms of just the amount of shots that Liverpool had, but was absolutely blocked by Nick Pope, Burnley's goalkeeper, and I think a future England number one alongside Dean Henderson. I think those two will be competing quite well with one another for that number one spot in the English national team. But overall, impressive from Nick Pope. I just the amount of shots that Mo Salah had was incredible, and just how Nick Pope just shut down Mo Salah. And you could see just from Mo Salah's facial expressions and his reactions that he was not pleased with himself. And I think that he shouldn't be too hard on himself, because the saves that Nick Pope was having was quite impressive, but also the way he was reading what the shots would, where the shots would go, is impressive as well. Now, I think that Nick Pope should definitely be a goalkeeper that should move to a bigger team, and I think that exactly what Nick Pope offers is those amazing saves. In that game, I think that he was unfortunate to be scored on, because just his overall performances But overall, from Nick Pope, just looking at his seasonal stats is incredible. Let's see here. 14 clean sheets, one of the most in the league, behind Allison, and 112 saves, fifth in the league. But it looks even more impressive considering that he's one save away from being third, equal in third. And I think that Nick Pope, it should be noted that the same with Danny Ings and how he plays is that the teams that they're in are teams that aren't as fully in depth talent wise in those squads. Nick Pope's team is Burnley, and Burnley doesn't have as much resources or as a amazing squad as some of the top teams, such as Liverpool. And I think the fact that he's able to have 14 clean sheets and with those 112 saves means a lot. And the saves that you see from the more higher up teams are, of course, the relegation strugglers who are looking to hold in there. But overall, impressive from Nick Pope. And I think that Nick Pope is definitely a goalkeeper that should be on the eye of some top clubs. And I think now this might be a long shot, but I think he could be a replacement for Kepa. I think that Kepa just... I think it would be... I think if Chelsea wants to give him another season, if that doesn't work out, then they need to move on from him. But right now, I think that they should move on from him as well. I think that just despite it not being entirely his fault for the defeat against Sheffield United, I think that Nick Pope could be a strong, suitable replacement for Chelsea. I think that they shouldn't spend a large amount of money like they did on Kepa, who turned out to be a flop, but I do think that they should inquire on a potential transfer of Nick Pope to Chelsea Football Club. Another game, of course, was the Brighton versus Man City game that just recently wrapped up by the time we're recording this podcast. I think that just impressive from Man City, 2 consecutive absolute demolishing of teams. Brighton just 5-0 clean, Raheem Sterling getting a hat trick, impressive. I think it's interesting though how Raheem Sterling was linked, and I think he was also looking to get a move to Real Madrid. I don't know if it's going to happen now. I think that with there's a new market, new transfer market surrounding the COVID-19 outbreak, and some teams aren't willing to sell some of their players, and some teams aren't even willing to buy players for a higher price and as many players because revenue is going down for those clubs. But I think it's interesting how those reports were earlier, and I wonder if it's going to reignite some of that interest from big clubs such as Real Madrid, because I think that Raheem Sterling is still a world-class player. I mean, three goals in that Brighton game is just quite impressive, and I think that he definitely has a future for a potentially even bigger club. I think that Man City is still at the top in terms of being a massive club, but I think that he would pounce on the idea of moving to Real Madrid. Now, speaking of transfer news, let's talk about the Jadon Sancho situation. And of course, we're hearing all sorts of rumors that Manchester United are the primary club that's looking to sign Jadon Sancho. Other clubs, such as Liverpool, for example, aren't willing to sign him because they don't want to spend the financial resources to get Jadon Sancho. Now, for those of you who don't know, and for those who do know, just a recap of how impressive Jadon Sancho is, just absolutely blitzing the Bundesliga. I think he is definitely a world-class player in the future, and I think he's nearly at that edge of becoming a world-class player. Now, according to the transfer market and the Athletic, Manchester United are, of course, looking to get Borussia Dortmund to lower the price. I mean, a lot of clubs are being hesitant on spending as much, but they're pretty confident, Manchester United, that they can gather up the finances for Jadon Sancho. Now, Borussia Dortmund, the club who Jadon Sancho plays for, it wants 120 million euros for him, a large fee, and they want the transfer to be completed before August 10th. So they set a hard deadline, and Manchester United, or according to the report, aren't really fazed by this restriction, and I think that is dangerous in the conversation talks. But let's be honest, I don't know anything about negotiation when it comes to these players, but I do think it's just from my outside perspective. I don't think that looks too good in terms of just really potentially angering Dortmund, because they're not the same club that other clubs are, such as like when Bruno Fernandes's club, Sporting, I believe. I don't think those teams are as strong as Borussia Dortmund. Borussia Dortmund is more of a strong-headed team. They've done these type of transfers before, where they transfer their great young players to bigger teams and they sell them for such a high price. Now, there are also reports from Manchester United that they think they can get the financial resources, as I said earlier, but there are reports that they're looking and potentially considering getting someone who is similar to Sancho, but for a cheaper price, a cheaper alternative. Ousmane Dembele. He was a former Borussia Dortmund player as well, and he plays for Barcelona. There was a huge amount of expectations. He's 23 now, and he was just an amazing young player. But now he, unfortunately, has been riddled with injuries and just having a struggle to get back in and really unleash his potential and his ability. And I think that Manchester United are thinking about potentially taking that. But I don't think that they should, really, for Dembele. I think that he's too shaky of a player in terms of his injury proneness. I think that they should look to still get Jadon Sancho. And I think that the next season will be quite incredible with the amount of clubs that will be strong. I don't think we're going to see a dominant performance from Liverpool like we have this season in the next season, even if they put in the same performance, because those top clubs are going to be way stronger. I think that Chelsea and Manchester United are going to look way stronger. I think Arsenal will look a little bit better, but they won't be at the same level of Chelsea and Manchester United. Manchester United and Chelsea should be in top four. Man City should be in top four and should try to contest the title and will contest the title. And I think that Liverpool will have a hard time. And I think if Liverpool wins the title again, I think it will be a massive and incredible feat. Now, moving on to our segment for our podcast. For every podcast, we go over a Wonderkid to watch, a player who is young and has incredible talent and a strong future that could be enabled if they achieve their potential. Now, this Wonderkid to watch, our two previous Wonderkids to watch, were, of course, in the Premier League, but this one will be in the Bundesliga, a Dutch striker who is the potential heir to Robert Lewandowski's throne as Bayern Munich striker, Joshua Zirkzee. The Dutch striker has been absolutely incredible this season. He hasn't played that many games for Bayern Munich in the Bundesliga, but what he's been able to do and what are the glimpses that we're seeing from Zirkzee is quite incredible. 19 years old, was 18 earlier in the season, and an impressive 4 goals and 1 assist in 9 Bundesliga appearances. Now, on the outside, it might not look as impressive, correct? But if you look deeper into the stats and you see the amount of minutes that he's been playing, 73 minutes per goal. So that means that less than 90 minutes, the average match time, you can see how many goals he's bagging. And I think that's quite incredible for what he's able to achieve and what he's able to do for Bayern Munich at such a young age of 18 and 19. He's looking like he could be the heir. And there's, of course, been other Bayern Munich players such as Fiat Arp, who has also been touted as a potential future striker for Bayern Munich. But I think that Zirkzee is showing more of that quality. If you look at some of his key attributes, he has great pace, and he's 6'4". Now that only means one thing. He has some strong aerial ability, so he can really be useful for those set pieces and those corners, just really getting above the defenders and just trying to get those headers in and get more goals for his team, as well as just being an intelligent reader of the game. Specifically, his movement on the ball and off the ball, just really threatening the defense of the opposition team and really dividing up that defense. And as a SC Freiburg fan, when he played and scored against our team, you could see just how he was just breaking up Freiburg in a defensive way, just really getting behind the lines in terms of just getting behind in the way their structure was. And I think that's quite impressive for his age. And I think that the players at Bayern Munich, where he can learn from, And of course, Hansi Flick, who is an incredible coach, and I think that's been quite well revealed in what he's been able to do with Bayern and just rebounding from some poor performances and helping them win the title. And the DFB Pokal Cup, I think that it's potentially a strong player that could be the future for Bayern Munich, because Robert Lewandowski is the current plan and current star player for Bayern Munich, and just what he's been able to achieve this season. But he's 31, he's getting old, and he will retire, I think, in a couple of years or in the quite soon. And I think that Joshua Zirkzee can step in that role with the more experience he gets and the more closer he gets to his potential, and can be a solid player that Bayern Munich can rely on as the new heir and the current heir of Robert Lewandowski's throne as the striker of Bayern Munich. Thank you all for watching. That will be the last segment of this podcast. I just want to thank you all. This is episode 11 of the podcast. It's incredible how many episodes we've gone through. And for those of you who've been listening and going on our YouTube channel and leaving comments, our YouTube channel is Football Baron. And if you are listening on any other podcast platform, you can go, please, we'd appreciate it. Give us 5 stars or just rate us, follow us, or subscribe on that podcast platform, whether it's Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcasts. We appreciate it. And please go check out our YouTube channel, where we put smaller clips of this podcast into a more easily watchable medium. And if you would like to go on our YouTube channel, again, Football Baron, please check it out and subscribe and watch some of our videos if you would like to. Thank you again for listening, and hope you all have a great day.